On November 29th, 1970, a university professor and his two young daughters were hiking through Isdalen Valley near Bergen, Norway, when they made a discovery that would launch one of the most disturbing investigations in European history. What they found was a woman's body, badly burned, surrounded by objects placed with almost ritualistic precision. But the most unsettling part wasn't how she died. It was discovering that this woman, who we still call the Isdal Woman, had been living as 14 different people. 5 days before her body would be found, the woman who called herself Fenella Lorch checked into room 407 at the Hotel Hordheimen in Bergen. The staff remembered her vividly, not because she was loud or demanding, but because of how precisely she moved through their lobby. She was in her 30s with dark hair cut fashionably short, and she wore clothes that whispered expensive without shouting it. The receptionist, Avhild Runs, noticed her immediately. There was something about the way she held herself, shoulders back, chin slightly raised, that made you think she'd grown up somewhere with marble floors. And so Fenella Lorch signed the register with careful, elegant handwriting. She listed her home as Brussels, her occupation as antiquities dealer. She spoke flawless German to the staff, though Elvhild detected something underneath, maybe French, maybe something Eastern European. When offered help with her luggage, she declined politely but firmly. She had 2 suitcases, both expensive leather, both bearing tags from hotels across Europe. But there was something else, Alvhild noticed, something that would bother her for years afterward. When Fenella Lorch smiled, it never quite reached her eyes. They remained watchful, scanning the lobby even as she made pleasant conversation about Bergen's November weather. In her room, she would maintain the same precise habits. The cleaning staff found her belongings arranged with military precision cosmetics lined up by size, clothes folded with sharp corners. She had an unusual collection of wigs in different styles and colors, which she apparently alternated daily. The hotel restaurant staff noted that she ate alone, always at the same corner table where she could see both the entrance and the kitchen doors. She ordered in fluent English one night, perfect French the next. She told the waiter she was in Bergen on business, researching antique Norwegian jewelry for clients in Belgium. It was a reasonable story. Bergen had been a trading hub for centuries, but when pressed for details about her work, just friendly conversation, she would deflect with that same smile that never warmed her eyes. On the morning of November 23rd, she paid her bill in cash and checked out. The doorman offered to call her a taxi, but she said she preferred to walk. He watched her navigate the cobblestone streets in her low heels, pulling her elegant coat tight against the Norwegian winter. She turned left at the corner and vanished into the morning mist rising from the harbor. She would check into the Hotel Rosenkrantz later that same day, this time under a different name, Vera Jarle. Same elegant handwriting, same careful signature, same watchful eyes. And 6 days after that, hikers would find what remained of her in a valley the locals called Death Valley, though that name supposedly came from medieval times and had nothing to do with her. Or so everyone hoped. The Isdalen Valley sits 5 kilometers outside Bergen, carved between Mount Fløyen and Mount Ulriken like a wound in the landscape. Even on bright days, shadows pool in its depths. The locals had been calling it Death Valley for centuries, a name that came from medieval tales of accidents and suicides among the steep paths. On that November morning, fog clung to the valley floor like smoke, and so Professor Hegraff was keeping his daughters close as they picked their way down the hiking trail. The youngest spotted at first what looked like a mannequin among the rocks, partially hidden by low-hanging branches. But mannequins don't smell like that. The professor pulled his daughters back immediately, recognizing what they'd stumbled upon. The body was positioned strangely, almost formally. The woman lay on her back, arms bent upward in what investigators would later describe as a boxer stance, a common position for bodies exposed to extreme heat. But it was what surrounded her that transformed a tragic death into something far more disturbing. Objects had been arranged around the body with deliberate care. An umbrella unopened, rubber boots placed neatly side by side, a collection of jewelry, A watch, rings, earrings laid out on the rocks as if for display, empty bottles that had contained sleeping pills, a half-eaten apple, and strangest of all, paper lots of paper, some partially burned, some intact, covered in what looked like coated writing. But when the police arrived and began their investigation, they discovered something that changed everything. Every single label had been cut from her clothes. The manufacturing tags, care instructions, size labels, all carefully removed with scissors. The same was true of her toiletries found nearby. Someone had methodically eliminated any trace of where these items had been purchased. The medical examiner found something even more unsettling. She hadn't died from the fire. The autopsy revealed she'd consumed at least 50 sleeping pills, a massive overdose of phenobarbital. The fire had come after. And despite the extensive burning, they found something else. Her fingerprints had been sanded off. The Bergen police had never seen anything like it. Inspector Carl Halverson, who led the investigation, would later say it was like peeling an onion, where every layer revealed something more disturbing than the last. They started with what they knew: a woman, approximately 35 years old, 164 centimeters tall, with short dark hair. Her dental work was extensive and expensive, but didn't match Norwegian techniques the gold crown suggested somewhere in southern or eastern Europe, and so naturally they began tracking her movements backward from the hotels. What they discovered defied belief. This woman hadn't been traveling under just 2 names. In the 6 months before her death, she had crisscrossed Europe using at least 8 different passports. Fenella Lorch, Bira Jarle, Elizabeth Lean, Claudia Tielt, Alexia Zarna Murches. Each identity complete with different nationalities, birthplaces, and occupations. But that wasn't even the worst part. The police found her suitcases at the Bergen railway station, and inside they discovered the coded notes that would torment investigators for decades. Pages and pages of what appeared to be a cipher, combinations of numbers and letters that might have been dates, might have been locations, might have been names. One note read, 022, 028, P23, A1811. Another simply said, Via Baselnakte. Cryptographers from Norwegian intelligence tried to crack the code. They failed. What they did manage to decode were her movements, painstakingly reconstructed from hotel registers and witness statements. The pattern that emerged was deeply unsettling. She would arrive in a city, check into a hotel under one name, then switch hotels and identities within days. She paid everything in cash. She never made phone calls from her room. She was spotted meeting men in hotel lobbies, brief encounters where something might have been exchanged, but the men were never identified. Therefore, investigators began to suspect what seemed impossible in quiet Norway: espionage. This was 1970, the height of the Cold War. Norway's strategic position between East and West made it a playground for intelligence services. The woman's travel pattern included cities known for spy activity: Geneva, Paris, Hamburg, Copenhagen. But despite all this evidence, one crucial question remained unanswered. If she was a spy, why did she end up dead in Isdalen Valley? The investigation uncovered one last disturbing detail. Several witnesses had seen her in Bergen during her final days, and they all mentioned the same thing. She seemed frightened. A taxi driver reported that she kept looking over her shoulder. A shop clerk said her hands shook as she counted out money. And most telling of all, hotel guests reported seeing her in the lobby with a man in a dark coat. She looked, in his words, like someone who had just received a death sentence. And this is where the story takes its darkest turn, because what happened next suggests she might have known exactly what was coming. On her last morning alive, the woman who died as the Isdal Woman took deliberate steps to erase herself. Hotel staff reported she spent hours in her room, and when she emerged, she carried a small bag, the rest of her belongings already deposited at the train station. She had cut every label from every piece of clothing she wore. She had removed her jewelry and placed it carefully in her pocket. She had, investigators believe, already consumed the first handful of sleeping pills. The path to Isdalen Valley isn't easy. From the city center, it requires multiple forms of transport and then a significant hike. For someone already feeling the effects of phenobarbital, it would have been grueling. But she made it to a specific spot, a hidden area among the rocks where she wouldn't be easily found. What happened in those final moments can only be reconstructed from the physical evidence. She arranged her possessions around her with the same precision she'd shown in life, the jewelry laid out on the rocks, the boots placed just so, the umbrella positioned carefully. As the sleeping pills took deeper hold, she would have felt her heart slowing, her breathing becoming shallow. The medical examiner determined she consumed more pills there, enough to guarantee death. In her final minutes, as consciousness faded, she somehow managed to set the fire that would consume most of the evidence of who she really was. The accelerant pattern suggested she had doused herself methodically, ensuring the flames would destroy her face, her remaining fingerprints, any chance of casual identification. Time of death was estimated at somewhere between 1 and 3 a.m. She died alone in the darkness of Isdalen Valley, taking her secrets with her. The Isdal Woman was buried in a zinc coffin in Bergen's Malendal Cemetery in February 1971. The funeral was attended only by police officials. No family ever came forward. No government ever claimed her. Her grave marker simply reads, "Unknown Woman." But her story didn't end there. In 2016, the Norwegian police reopened the case, using modern isotope analysis on her teeth and DNA testing on her remains. The results suggested she had moved frequently as a child, possibly from Eastern Europe to France or Germany, but her identity remains unknown. The coded notes have never been deciphered. The men she met were never found. And perhaps most haunting of all, in the decades since her death, several people have come forward claiming to have information about her identity. Each time, they've retracted their statements or disappeared before providing proof. She remains in her zinc coffin in Bergen, the woman of 14 names and no name at all, forever keeping her secrets in the cold Norwegian earth.